I drove over 100,000 miles in modified Porsches, including this one. And today I'm going to tell you both the good and the bad. Which modifications were worth it and which ones weren't. So here are 10 real truths about which modifications I would do again and which ones, yeah, don't do those. Modification 1. We all want our car to be a bit faster. There's a couple ways to do that. One is to add a ton of horsepower. That's my favorite way. But that costs a lot of money. And the thing is that when you spend all that money and you add all this horsepower, usually the car is a little less dependable. And dependability on a car, especially if you want it to be, say, a daily driver or just available over the weekends, does matter. Because of that, a lot of people want to modify their cars to be faster, so they reduce weight. Power to weight ratio is really what matters. So on one of my past Porsches, in my 944 to be exact, I really got into weight reduction. I did a bit on my Boxster as well, but I removed all of the insulation in the car. It was basically a race car for the road. It wasn't comfortable. The AC didn't work, so it was hot. I was about to take the AC compressor out, remove the back seats. Most of the time you didn't need them, but every now and then, if you wanted to carry a kid around or something like that, it's kind of nice to have back seats. The car did feel a little faster. You could brake a little better. You could turn a little faster. It was already dialed. Not a lot of horsepower because it was just a naturally aspirated 944, but it was plenty quick with that weight reduction. But the thing is, I didn't really enjoy driving it anymore because there was just too much weight reduction. So if you really have a road car that you're on drive on a regular basis, and this was my daily driver, weight reduction just isn't worth it. Lesson number 2, Porsches are incredible cars. They're fast, they handle well, but one of the senses that really makes you feel fast is sound. Part of the problem with the new electric vehicles is that you don't have that extra sense of how fast I'm going. And because many of Porsches don't really sound well until you really rev them out, you lack that feel of real sense of speed. That's why one of the best modifications you can do is a new exhaust. This particular 911 has a Fister exhaust. It's essentially a stock exhaust with an extra pipe in. What that allows is a bit more sound on cold startup. It doesn't drone. When you are driving normal in a neighborhood, it's a little bit louder, but not crazy loud. But when the moment is right and the road opens up, it sounds like this. So yeah, one of the first mods I would do on any Porsche, unless it has the Porsche sports exhaust already, is a sports exhaust. Lesson number 3, Porsche Boxsters and 911s. They already have a decent amount of horsepower. Even the earliest Boxsters have about 200 horsepower, which when you compare it to the things in the 80s, was actually a lot of horsepower. They have really good performance and can handle like a dream. But the stock air intake leaves something to be desired. That's where an upgraded plenum IPD makes a really good one. And all it does is, instead of the airflow hitting the back of a pipe and going each side and just circulating in there in a way that you don't want it, it smooths things out. Cars that I've driven that have it, I haven't done it on this one and I'm planning to do it. You feel it in the rear end dyno. It feels like it's faster. Some dyno numbers have it adding as much as 25 horsepower. And the big thing is kind of in the midsection, it evens things out and you get a little more power there. So if you have a naturally aspirated 911 or Boxster Cayman, an IPD plenum, can't say the word, plenum. An IPD plenum is a great upgrade that you should probably do. Lesson number 4, I have knee issues. And so right now I'm driving a Tiptronic 911. I know, first world problems, but the manual is the better driving experience. The Tiptronic is good. It's great for knee issues, but the manual is definitely the one to get. All of my previous Porsches had been manual cars. As such, I used to be a manual snob. One thing I had that really made the manual feel so much better was a short shift kit. It was just like a hot knife through butter. That rifle action, just a little bit shorter throw, enough to make you feel like it was going a lot faster, even if it wasn't. So if you have a manual Porsche, I highly recommend a short shift kit. You can even get the kits for the GE3. Just really works very well. Lesson number 5. This is a 1999 Porsche 911. And in 1999, CD changes were cool. Not so much today. Today, most of us don't even have CDs, and if they do, they're in a closet in a box. Most of us play our music from our phones, using Apple Music or Android Music. Because of this, having Apple CarPlay or Android Auto is an upgrade that is definitely worth it. So installing a new stereo that has Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you get your maps integrated. You can get some single DIN units or some double DIN units. On this one, I went for a fairly inexpensive single DIN unit just to try it out, see if I like it, have the original, and I could go back. I do like it quite a bit. Now I'm looking at possibly going for the Porsche PCCM Plus, which is Porsche's double DIN unit. It's a bit more expensive, but it is a true Porsche part. Pioneer makes some other good ones. There's some other ones out there that are good double DIN units, and upgrading to something with CarPlay or Android Auto, depending on what mobile device you have, is definitely worth it. Along with the exhaust, that's one of the first things I would do because it's just going to make that older car feel more modern, but not in a way that ruins the experience. Lesson number 6. When you think about an engine, it's really just an air pump. You got to take in air, and that helps it burn using the fuel and spark, and then it needs to expel air. So the faster you can get air in and the faster you can get air out essentially is going to make your engine faster. So of course, a very popular upgrade is just an air filter. There are performance air filters. K&N makes one that's pretty popular. A lot of them have this oil that you spray on it. The thing is, unless you have a chip and you have extra piping into it, it's questionable whether it really does anything from a performance aspect. And it does potentially allow more contaminants into your engine. It can seriously reduce your engine life because of these contaminants. I had put one on my old 944, and after doing it, it smoked like crazy. And I had a couple other engine problems where it developed a misfire, things of that nature. It could have been something else. I was able to get it fixed, but I changed back to a factory air filter after that experience. And I've never gone back. From then on, I only use factory air filters. The only reason to go with something else is if you're doing a full change that needs a different air filter that has more flow in it. But make sure you're careful that you're not getting contaminants in your engine, or it will shorten your engine life. Lesson number 7. Porsche Boxsters and Caymans are designed with what's called a snorkel. The snorkel has a cup in it. The cup in the opening helps prevent water from being sucked into the engine. This does restrict noise as well. So removing the snorkel is a popular modification. I did this on my Boxster. You get more intake noise with this modification. The downside is usually brittle plastics that can break when you're doing it. And if you live in a place that rains a lot, probably don't want to do this there because there is an increased chance that water could enter the engine if you desnorkel. If you only drive during sunny days when it's not raining and you're not in a place like Florida where you don't know when it's going to rain, then it's a great modification. I did it when I lived in California. I did like daily drive. I did drive it in the rain occasionally, but not very often, and had no issues. And in California, I kind of feel like that's not a problem. But in Florida, I probably wouldn't do it here because even though the sound was better and in a lot of ways it made the car react a little better, it isn't worth it. Not the risk because it rains so much here. So I would stay away from desnorkeling if you're in a rainy area, and only do it if you're in sunny California, maybe Arizona. Lesson number 8. As I mentioned briefly before, I have knee issues, and because of that, I have a Tiptronic transmission. I've also driven cars with the PDK. That transmission reads your mind. It's on the track. It's better than just about anything else you can drive. The experience of the manual is different. It's better. But the BDK, and to a lesser degree, the Tiptronic, has a lot of that experience. And when you put it in manual mode, the ability to dial up the gear you want is pretty spot on. But it's not all rainbows and unicorns. The early PDK cars and the Tiptronic cars use rocker switches. Rocker switches are great in that you can do it with one hand, and that's probably what Porsche was thinking when they decided, hey, let's go with the rocker switch design. It doesn't quite have that supercar feel that you want in your car that you're going to get with a paddle shifter. So a popular modification, one that I'm planning to do on this car, I've seen other people do it. I've driven cars with paddle shifters, love it. You can either change out the steering wheel for one with paddle shifters on it, Or you can modify, if you're a little more brave, and add paddle shifters to an existing steering wheel with the use of a Dremel tool and some wiring. That's one of my plans with this car, to do that in the fairly near future. And paddle shifting just makes the driving experience a bit more fun. It's definitely worth it to upgrade to paddles. Lesson number 9. A lot of times when we modify cars, we think about throwing as much horsepower out there. We think about making them faster. But for most people in most experiences, especially if you want to do a bit of track driving, suspension upgrades are going to make more improvements than just adding horsepower. If you can come out of a corner flatter and just take that corner faster because of your suspension setup, on a track, you're going to be much quicker. Now, if you get this wrong on a road car, it can be backbreaking. So getting the right suspension setup is key. I highly recommend, if you have other people who are in the Porsche club, that you can see what their suspension setup is, drive those, at least ride in them, see how they are, and make sure that you get the right suspension for what you want. If it's just going to be a daily driver, you might just want to stick with stock. Perhaps something just a bit more sporty, but you don't want something too much. Now, if you're going to be a track car, that suspension setup is going to be totally different. So I highly recommend you do a lot of research, but modifying the suspension correctly makes the car feel like a completely different animal and is completely worth it, even though it costs a lot. Lesson number 10. We're at the last lesson, folks. Woo! A lot of times when cars are modified, you kind of forget that making it faster is just part of the equation. Beyond making the car just drive faster, kind of also want to make it stop. Being able to stop faster, harder in a corner, making sure your brakes don't fade, those things do matter when you're performance driving. Because of this, upgrades on the brakes make a lot of difference. This can include GT3 air ducting. That just adds cooling to the brakes. You might not even upgrade the pads and the rotors, but you just add that extra little bit of cooling, and that makes a world of difference. But upgrading your pads, upgrading your rotors, and if you really need to, depending on what other modifications you do, upgrading to bigger brakes can really help you stop when you need to. On the track, you're going to be able to stop harder, faster, late braking. All these things start becoming more options with better brakes. And brake fade is a thing. Porsche has great brakes out of the box. When you just buy a stock Porsche, they tend to have really good brakes. But I've been on the track after a hot lap where the brakes are just cooking. And as such, a brake upgrade will pay huge dividends and will make the whole driving experience just that bit better. And it's really one of the more refined upgrades you can do instead of just throwing a million horsepower at something. The thing is, this is just one Porsche owner's experience. I've interviewed over 1,000 Porsche owners and learned this.